Hello and welcome to Bargain Bin. It's a video game podcast where myself, Jonny, and
myself, Jamie.
I'm not sure if that's actually the correct way to say. I don't know. It's a weird way to introduce ourselves, but it's a video game podcast where Jamie and I review games that are under $15 every week. Usually we try to do ones that are pretty recent releases, and this one fits that bill, although not quite as recent as all our other episodes perhaps have been. Today we are going to be talking about Easy Delivery Co., and it's a game published by a wonderful solo dev named Sam C., nicknamed Sweaters, and it is a 3D game with PSX graphics. That just means like early PlayStation style, kind of pixely, kind of honestly reminds me of A Short Hike, but all 3D. And in it, you are a delivery driver. You're a little cat who is driving around a snowy landscape full of hills, delivering packages in a gig worker style setup, and uncovering a overarching story that is a little mysterious. You'll see a lot of influencers talking about this game, saying this is a spooky game. When you're a little cat in a little K-truck driving around. If you don't know what a K-truck is, it's that little white truck, developed by the Japanese, and you'll see some hipsters driving it in the States or maybe in Canada or wherever you are.
Right-hand drive.
There you go. Wait, what does that mean?
Just the steering wheel's on the right side.
Really?
Yeah, so in the game, whenever you get out of the car, you get out on the right side.
I didn't even notice that. See, that's why you're here for the details. But that's kind of the rundown. Jamie, is there any more you wanted to add? I know sometimes you just read the Steam listings, but I kind of prefer to freestyle it, and I want to make sure that I got the point across.
I think that was pretty good. Maybe the only other thing I wanted to add is that you said snowy landscape, and it's a dreary snowy landscape. It is a very dreary setting.
Some of it.
Subdued colors.
I mean, a lot of it. I feel like
it's P&W vibes to the max.
I heard Brendan Bigley describe this game, who's like a podcaster, does Into the Aether, and also has his own like blog thing called Wavelength, and he called it like a hellscape. And if you hate the snow, it's a hellscape. It's like very snowy. And
there's never really any sunlight. I mean, it gets brighter during the day, but they're not like bright colors or sunlight shining through or things like that. And they're like blizzards and
yeah, I mean, for me, when I first showed Jamie the game, I was like, this is how my mind feels in winter. And it was a perfect vibe for me, but yeah, I think it is somewhat dreary, yeah.
And if you suffer from seasonal depression, then you will understand that sentiment and probably have a perfect picture of what the game looks like.
It's beautiful. I loved it. I loved the when just talking about the setting in particular. It really was. Driving around it felt very meditative for this time of year. But where do you want to kind of dive in? Because there's a lot to unpack with this one.
Well, the other thing that I wanted to add in just to your intro is that you mentioned that it released a little while back, but it released on September 18th. So like Jonny said, not as quite of a new release as we've played. I think it's the furthest one out from release date to when we actually played it, but it really enticed the both of us, and we want to expand our horizons. I think we'll tend to keep trying to play games that are closer to our podcast talking date. But every once in a while we might jump around and play something new. And then the other thing is that it is $12.99.
Yeah, which is a great price point, I think. Not, pushing the 15 limit like some of the games, but not, cheap enough or free enough that it was a bit janky. We initially this week we're going to do 2 games, which we'll talk about in kind of the binnable moments, honorable mentions section, or at least I will, that
Yeah, I didn't end up actually playing those games.
Yeah, I swapped out for this one just because this one is so sick, and those two weren't quite cutting it for me. But yeah, where do you kind of want to start? How about with kind of the loop of the game? just to get started, like, do you want to describe kind of the way the story progresses along as far as goals, and then also like the mechanics of what you're physically doing with your gamepad, like what buttons you're pressing to do what, and what's kind of the loop?
Yeah, so as Jonny mentioned, you're a delivery driver making deliveries. So as soon as you enter the game, you're given your truck and you're given a goal to pick up a delivery package from a storefront and then to drive a bit of a distance and deliver it to someone else. And then you get paid for that. And that essentially is honestly the whole loop of the game, but it expands to being that there are different towns that you can unlock as you progress through the story. You can't enter really a ton of buildings. What do you think? There are maybe like 10 to 12 buildings that you can pick up and deliver packages to.
But they're like, I guess it's kind of weird to describe in that like they are different across, like they're the same, but there are like different towns in which they reside. So
right.
So there's like 3 areas, and each main area has, 3 towns in it, and then each town hosts like a depot, or each area, 3 of the main areas, they each host like a depot, an Easy Mart, an Easy Pizza. But each of the 3 main areas each has like the same shop with the same like shopkeeper. And then those areas are split into 3 towns in themselves. So you kind of have to explore where it's like pick up at Easy Flowers. And you're like, well, I know where the Easy Flowers in that other place was, but where is it here? I have to drive up to the top of the hill. But yeah, that's kind of confusing, but that's how it is.
Right. And right off the bat, I think you're picking up from Easy Flowers and delivering to like an Easy Eats. And then of course the game is called Easy Delivery Co. and you're getting mail, as that is basically the company that has hired you and that you're working for. So right off the bat, I mean, when you mentioned like a review or someone calling it a hellscape, I feel like that is maybe part of the vibe. Is from the first quote unquote tutorial, you realize that this Easy Delivery Co. seems to own everything and it's just easy everywhere, and you're part of that system and that machine. So they really kick it off with that.
Yeah, the tagline that becomes more and more sinister as you go throughout the game is "Have an easy day."
Have an easy day.
Where it's like, I'm not having an easy day. I never sleep.
Yeah, and you're constantly, right, yeah, you literally never sleep as a character, and you're constantly always basically broke.
Yeah.
And having to make deliveries just to pay for gas and other things that you need.
Yeah, it was really interesting as far as, you're progressing throughout, and as you go, you'll get these main goals and then you'll get side goals, and usually they involve buying something that is like prohibitively expensive. So that's how the game kind of locks you out of progression and makes you play, is like, okay, well, I know I have to get $60 for the cook pot, or $100 for the fender that I need to break through these gates, or $300 for the ice chains I need to get into a certain area. And so each time you're sometimes unlocking new towns, new areas, but you're working toward earning enough money to progress in the game. And in that way, I guess it's kind of like a search action game in that like certain places are gated until you get these abilities. But it's not like, they're not secretive, I would say it's mainly a vibes game in that like, well, I have $0 right now and I have to get up to 300. So I'm just going to spend a couple hours like driving back and forth from, Fishing Town to Snowy Peaks. And I really enjoyed that part of it. I think like depending on how one's attitude is, it could feel grindy at certain parts of the game where you're like staring down, you're staring down a number of jobs to try to get up to a certain amount of money. But I think that in that way, the mechanics reinforce the, narrative message of it being a quote-unquote hellscape, as we discussed, as far as like gig work is a hellscape. And particularly, we've seen that play out in the news over the last, 15 years, 10 years, as far as like how shitty it is for Uber drivers, how shitty it is for, a number of gig working sectors, that this game, I think, does a great job of balancing kind of the cute coziness and the vibes, kind of just driving around this snowscape that can be really chill, with this message of like, damn, like this sucks.
Yeah, and they really lean into it with, I mean, as Jonny mentioned, like you don't sleep, but there is a timer on your screen. So it kind of gives life sim vibes in that way, but you never have to sleep. You never can sleep. And instead you have an energy bar. And every time your energy gets low, you have to buy an energy drink or coffee or something else to boost your energy up. So I feel like that even is just kind of more commentary on just the no sleep and chugging these energy drinks to get by. And I know we kind of talked about this week about that aspect of, even though there's a timer and you're cycling through days and nights, it is nice that, I mean, it is kind of nice that you never have to go to sleep, because then you're never racing against the clock. Like you're just making your deliveries day after day. And it is cool. I mean, yeah, the thing I really appreciate about this game is how it balances the mechanics in a fun way and pairs that with commentary.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like Sam C, the developer, made so many smart choices as far as how to represent the message he was trying to get across, but kind of solving problems by leaving things out. So like by not having that, sleep cycle and making it more of a life sim vibe, he brings in players like me who would not like a game like that. But that also is just less development for him. In addition, like you're the only car on the road, there's no other cars, which makes it feel all the more solitary and isolating at times, driving home the message. But it also makes it more fun to play because you don't have to worry about like traffic patterns and stuff. And again, less development time for him, less assets, less AI to program into the game. And I think that was just like, that was really driven home to me as far as like the elegance of space in game design, that I think is really embodied in this game. Another thing that I had to say and wanted to pick your brain about as far as the energy bar and the progression of the player character throughout the game is like, I find that as you start to gain more knowledge in Easy Delivery Co., you start to branch out as far as what you are consuming to keep your energy up. And I thought that was really poignant as far as like, teaching players in this, greater analogy of, capitalist hellscape to like make their own food and be curious about what they're putting in their body, because you start out like just buying these energy drinks and you're kind of a drone. You're like, I just have to grind for this cash. And then, we'll go into spoilers later and make that part very clear, but you meet a friend along the way who's kind of helping you out and is like, coffee's way more, cost effective. It takes a little bit of time to make, but everything that is good takes a little bit of time to make. I feel like that's a paraphrasing of a quote from the game. I thought the writing was great in this game too. And I think it was, the story was helped written by someone other than the developer. But anyway, and then, you go farther along and you get these different things that help you deal with the cold. You get like, you can drink tea. You can eventually make yourself like fish soup. And these things outside of the energy drinks, they're not producing waste like the energy drinks, which I thought was poignant that you have to like throw out. But they're also like helping you survive your life better and nourishing you better. And I thought that was both, again, like mechanically brilliant, but also very poignant as a message to someone who might be caught up in those cycles of just like grinding for the next paycheck.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Honestly, I didn't really think too much about that. I was just like, ooh, new things to make and try. So I think you probably outlined all the commentary on that we have between the two of us, but I do think that is like a really fascinating way to think about that progression. This probably isn't as related in a nicer, more optimistic, philosophical way, but I feel like for me, my progression in the game was that I found myself going from more rigid to more free. Like I think when I first started, I was like, okay, I just gotta like make these little deliveries. I'll pick them up. I gotta stay on the road. I'll drive on this road. I'll drop it off. And then as things kept progressing, I was driving off the cliffs. They have ramps set up in places. I was trying to, I mean, this is probably more on the capitalist efficiency route. I was trying to find the most efficient routes to go through things. But I just found myself playing and driving with a lot more reckless abandon, which for me, who tends to be, I guess, more of a perfectionist player, like I like to do things right. Sometimes I like to find the like quirky, mischievous things to do, but it was fun to slowly realize that the game actually pretty highly encourages just curiosity and mischievousness and doing random things and trying to see what buttons you can press. And I found that really joyful in how they set that up, but not in a super obvious way. Just kind of, you slowly start to realize that the game rewards curiosity.
Yeah, and I think like a good metaphor for what you're talking about as far as like discovering the game and kind of like the interesting things that this game can make you feel is you I think you embodied it in that like your first delivery you were like trying to balance all of the, I think it was flower pots in the back of the truck, and they kind of like they'll like slide around and fall out, but actually what the game does is really interesting, where it's like if you, let's just say you have 3 boxes in the back of your truck, if 2 of them fall out and 1 of them is still in the truck, when you pick it up again, they'll just like all be there again. So you just need like 1 part of the delivery in the back of the truck, which is really interesting and something that it doesn't tell you right off the bat. So you'll be like driving.
I think it actually does tell you that, and that's how I figured it out, because I was like, there's no way that you have to make all these deliveries being this careful. And I opened up an old email that I think was one of the first ones you get, and it outlines in there, it's like some of the packages will fall out. Easy delivery co-prioritizes efficiency. As long as part of the package gets there, you'll get paid in full.
Right, but it's like it tells you in a roundabout way. I didn't really know what that meant. Like I thought like, yeah, I couldn't really tell basically. And then it's like there's no stakes. But even if it falls out, you lose like $1 because it's just on your tip. So I feel like that was another like capitalist commentary thing almost, where it's like, well, you really need to grind for this $1. Like be super extra careful. But anyway, the point I was going to make was like I found that instead of like trying to find the most efficient route, for me as a player, as I got later into the game, I started doing like really reckless stuff just to like see what would happen, you know? And it almost gave me this haunted, eerie feeling of like Groundhog Day, the movie, where I remember watching that as a kid and just being horrified of like what Bill Murray was doing when he realized that like the day would loop on him like regardless. So like he like jumps off a building. He does like all of these things that are very like reckless and obviously harmful to one's health and life and the ability to live. And I thought that was just really fascinating that I found a similar tendency playing out with how I wanted to interact with my car and interact with the game, as I started to realize that, it was just this ever looping day-night cycle where you didn't get to sleep and you were just driving these deliveries. But you could go really fast and you could slide on the ice and you could do a number of things. And you could, die and get reincarnated each time.
Yeah, I kind of found myself almost equating it to how I feel when I'm backpacking sometimes, where the first bit of backpacking, it feels monotonous. Like you're just out there walking, especially if you've been really sucked into all the serotonin boosts that today's media day and age puts out on you. And I feel like for this game, it was kind of similar where like you're just driving, making the deliveries at first. And if you're not really used to slowing down in that way, it can feel a bit monotonous. Like my first play session, I didn't go for that long. But then as you get into that flow, like you start to appreciate it and find the reward in it. And then, like you mentioned, driving with reckless abandon, once you kind of realize the freedom that you have in that sense. And similarly, I feel like for backpacking, once you get into your flow, like you might start to goof off a little bit, or you'll see things that you're curious about on the trail. And so I feel like for me, it made me think a little bit more about kind of, I guess, like attention span in that way, and how it may or may not spark curiosity. Like I had just recently watched a video on attention span for games, and obviously good games don't necessarily adhere to the really short attention span that we have. Like you still do have to kind of slow down to appreciate a good game, because a good game isn't going to reward you immediately. It's going to reward slowing down and having curiosity and exploring things. Whereas it's more of the social media apps or small mobile games that really lean into how much they can trigger short attention spans or reward short attention spans. And I think this game was a really good example of that slowing down, where if you're not ready to do that, you'll probably find this game to be a drag and to be boring and to be a grind. But if you lean into that and adapt to it, it is rewarding in so many of those ways.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good point. I was wondering if you would also describe another mechanic that is central to the game that we haven't really covered yet, which is like what happens when you're outside.
Yeah, I did want to mention that earlier, and then we just jumped into our conversations like we usually do. Yeah, you can't really walk around much. It's a snowy area. It's cold here. You're not wearing warm clothes. So if you're outside for too long, so that's outside of your truck or outside of a building, you start to see this icicle graphic kind of consume your screen, and you get these warnings about seeking shelter. And so essentially it gets too cold and you have to find shelter in order to warm back up again. So you're also very tied to your truck or being inside. It's not really a game where you're moving around too much as the little character. And the other way it deters from that is that when you are outside of the car, just as your little character, the view panning on the screen is limited. You like can't look around, which is something I found really fascinating at first, but there are kind of some cool challenges that introduces later in the game. And then when you're in the truck, you have a much wider view and can obviously like drive around and turn around a lot easier, and you can actually pan your view screen. But yeah, when you're outside of the car or shelter, it gets cold, so you gotta stay inside.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It brings up these moments where you have to like top off on some soup or tea to like stave off the cold, or like you can flick your lighter on to like stop the frost from coming in as quickly, or you can build fires to like reheat yourself. There are these like kind of survivalist almost like mechanics built in to the game that I thought were really smart. And it's also just something I wanted to mention as far as like another reason why I think this game reads as spooky, in addition to the dreary setting and kind of the mystery that you're uncovering. Those like camera angles that are, obscuring what is directly ahead is like a common, cinematic technique too, where it's like you feel way more scared, say in like a horror movie, when like the camera is like right on the main character and they're like walking through a hallway and they're like walking toward the camera and you're like, what's behind or even what's in front of them? You can't kind of see anything because it's so close. And that's something that, is mirrored here. So it makes sense. All right. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about, we've talked about the graphics. What were your impressions of kind of the PSX graphics and like the pixely 3D polygons?
I really liked it. You very quickly realize that it's set up to look like you're looking through an old computer screen. And I think that for me immediately set off some questions of being like, I feel like this means something and is not just a cool style, but it also is a cool style. The graphics, yeah, are minimal, but fit the story and fit the vibe, and they're also kind of cute and, like we've said, cozy in a sort of hellscape sad boy way. So I really enjoyed it. I feel like it helped me feel like I could just kind of cozy in and sit back and relax as I'm making my deliveries. I think the only thing for me is that it is a pretty dark and dreary game, and I usually like bright colors and vibrancy. And of course, that is meant to be part of the story and the intention behind the game, but it also is dark and dreary. And so I think there are times where I wished I could have more color and vibrancy to just like feel a bit more awake during the game. But again, that's kind of part of the intention.
Have you played a short hike?
I have not.
Sense? I kind of liken this to like the yin to a short hike's yang, where it's like they're very similar graphically, and they both feature animal protagonists, and they both feature like interesting adventurous worlds on this like pretty limited map. But a short hike is extremely colorful, and you're upbeat, and it's still telling a poignant story, whereas this is like obviously a lot drearier. For me, like I love Short Hike, one of my favorite games. This is also like pretty up there. Like the art was perfect for me. It like really did a lot for me. The like character models are awesome. They're all like cats and dogs, or maybe just one dog. And you're a little cat guy, and you're in this cute little truck, and there's pine trees, and it's awesome. In addition, I wanted to talk about the like soundtrack, which is brought in a really interesting way. It's diegetic, which means like it's playing in the game ostensibly, because you have this little radio that's always on in your car that will sometimes be playing these kind of looping like jungle beats, or these this like EDM music, or kind of this chill lo-fi music, or like the news will be going on in a kind of like Charlie Brown parents talking kind of way, where you can't really understand what they're saying, but it is like kind of a daytime news show. And I thought that was awesome. I looked it up. The developer worked with 2 musicians, and they each did the music for different areas of the game. And so you just get these different vibes going on, but they're all super chill and like fun to listen to. And I feel like it'd be a great way to drive around if you were actually doing it. Yeah,
there was definitely my favorite area for music was in Snowy Peaks. As you get closer to the radio tower, there's just I forget what song it was, but some song, and it was so groovy. And I found myself always wanting to go back there just so I could listen to that song. But then there were some others where it would be nighttime in the game, and the music was just really vibey but kind of slow. And if I were a delivery driver listening to that, I would for sure be falling asleep on the road. But as a gamer playing the game, it was really relaxing and cozy. But yeah, I did really like that aspect of the game. I think I will frequently come back to the point that I think this game really encourages and rewards curiosity, and not just taking things for granted. Because it definitely took me a while to realize that you can turn on and off the radio and change the stations. There's a good period of game where I was like, why isn't my radio on? What happened? And then I just started pressing some buttons and realized I could turn it on and set the station. And I felt a little silly for that. But it again showcases how this game doesn't really do any hand holding. I mean, it tells you the goals you need to do in that sense, but anything extra beyond that main storyline, you're only going to figure out if you try things and press buttons and explore areas and just go for it on your own to see what happens.
Yeah, and we'll get into that a little later. I think we'll do like a spoilers section, and the way I'm going to demarcate that, I think you can tell me if this is a good way, is like we'll finish up here with as long as we want to go. Then I'll play like our interlude music. we'll do the spoiler section, and then I'll put in more interlude music after, so the listeners, if they're skipping through the spoiler section, will know. They'll be like, okay, there's the vibey piano. It's time for endorsements and binnable moments and all that good stuff. Now, Jamie, I believe on your YouTube channel, Little Red Jam, you posted a short that said, getting gas still sucks, or like gasoline still sucks.
It's still a scam.
Still a scam. I was wondering if you would like just describe kind of the gasoline mechanics in this game, or the fuel mechanics. I felt like, so this game is essentially like just fetch quests for money. Like that's pretty much what you're doing. And if it wasn't so vibey, like that does sound kind of like a bad game, but I mean, spoiler alert, I love this. To me, like getting the fuel, because the only thing fuel really does is if you're low enough on fuel, your like cabin of your car won't be like warm. So like if you're outside, it'll be like frozen, and then if you get in, you won't like heat up again, whereas if you have fuel, you will. And then if you get like super low, you won't be able to take jobs anymore, and it'll tell you like go to the nearest fuel station. Those are the only two things that happen. You can like always drive around, which I thought was interesting. But it's interesting to me then that like since those are the only two things, I was thinking like, why would SAMC like include it at all if it's kind of just an additional roadblock? And to me, like the thing I just kept coming back to is like, yeah, the like capitalist metaphor, and how like you're not like, you're spending all the time in your car pretty much. Like you're very rarely walking around as your character, as you said. And in that way, you're kind of like becoming like, the car is the character to me almost more than like the little cat.
Yeah, I would really agree with that.
And so I'm wondering, like, what did you make of the fuel as far as like it obviously being a nuisance to have to spend? You're spending like $30 to $50 on fuel every time.
If you're getting all the way low, it could be like 60 to 80. It's expensive,
which is a major setback. But in that way, it's realistic.
The PNW vibes also match up with the PNW gas prices.
Yeah, that's funny. But it's just like, I found myself being frustrated. Like, why do I have to drop like 50 hard-earned dollars? I just spent like half of my tank driving to get that. But that's like, you know, that's something I don't think about day to day. But as a gig worker, like that would exactly be your experience. So for me, I found it instructive and like opening up my perspective to have empathy for folks who do grind, you know, for their living like that.
Yeah, I definitely felt like it was more of a commentary piece because, yeah, I mean, gas can be really expensive, and there are a lot of areas, at least in America, that you need a car. You absolutely need a car to make money and go to work. And so you need to be able to pay for gas, and you have to account for that in your paycheck, however you're earning money. So I think you're right on it. On the way it opened your eyes, I think it was mostly a commentary piece because, like you said, otherwise mechanically, it doesn't really do much besides being annoying. But I think in real life, like, it's not just annoying, it's really quite awful. And the other thing was that you can't partial pay for gas at all unless you don't have enough funds in your wallet. And then it'll just use whatever money you have and you'll get a partial amount of gas. But to my knowledge, at least, you couldn't pay for a half tank. If you needed $60 of gas and you had $60 in your wallet, you'd lose that $60 and it would all go to gas. So I also found myself keeping that in mind, and sometimes I would get the thing I needed before I got gas and hope that it would work out to where I could get the last delivery I needed set up, deliver it, and then buy the thing I needed, and then get my gas with my $10 left over in my pocket, because I knew if I got gas first, then I'd have to make another delivery after that. So there were some things there where it just made the flow have to be a little bit more intentional. But yeah, like I said, I think it was a big commentary part of the game.
One other thing I wanted to mention before we hop into our spoilers section was the writing of the game. I wanted to touch on that a little bit more. The story unfolds like entirely through, either emails that you're getting, but predominantly through like character dialogue, where you're either talking to your friend, who we'll get into more, or the shopkeepers. And so it's sparse in that way. Like, you're getting a few lines of dialogue with each delivery, each time you go in and talk to one of your friends in town. But
and they do all have different personalities, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, super fun. And one thing I loved was that you don't only get like main story stuff of like what's going on, like this is a mystery. You also get like, oh, I'm really crushing on this character, or there's one character who flirts with you all the time, or
there's a romance story kind of.
Yeah, and there are a couple characters who are like, hey, whippersnapper, like I remember I saw a flower once.
Oh my gosh. The worst though is the biohacker character. They like at some point are like, I wake up super early and run 17 kilometers and then I do yoga and take an ice bath. You should try it sometime. I was like, I can't believe they did this.
Also, tell me about your strategy for staying warm when you run that far, character. I can barely walk 2 steps without dying. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on the writing. I thought it was great. We'll talk about it more in the spoiler section. And then let's move on to spoilers. If you don't want to be spoiled on this game, just click, the 15 minutes ahead skip until you hear the piano music for a second time, and then we'll move on to endorsements and binnable moments from there.
So now for all the meat of this game, the substance. We're into the spoiler territory. Tell me what you thought of how the story starts to get introduced, or when did you first realize that something was up?
I think for me it was when the game became self-referential about like the different shops. Like, well, I mean, it wasn't even the game being self-referential, which it does. It's like, why are all the same shopkeepers in each town sometimes? But I think for me it was like when I realized that the same brand that was like, the same corporation I was working for as a gig worker was also the one that like owned every store. So that it's all like Easy brand, right? So it's like Easy Depot, Easy Cafe, Easy Bakery, what have you. Easy Pizza, Easy Eats. I think the only thing maybe not are like bar and pawn shop. Can you remember any others that maybe were not Easy? I feel like the rest were Easy, like Easy Fuel.
Easy Bakery, maybe. I don't know. You can put Easy in front of all of them, but definitely I know the bar was just bar.
Yeah, anyway, so that's when I realized it. And then, of course, later on with, like, you can tell it's, like, tech or code related later on when the characters start to glitch out. And, like, it just starts with a little bit of, like, I can't, like, or the flower lady is always saying, like, I can't feel feelings, or, like, something's wrong with me. And
she's always glitching out.
She has a stutter, and she's really cute, which I guess you could interpret as a glitch. But then it gets worse and worse, and some characters are like they're throwing errors where it'll be like when you have an error in code, so it's like it's saying like I don't remember, and then like in the middle of that will be a bracket and like error code this corrupted
SD
data
number underscore error.
Yeah, and then eventually you get to the point where like some of the shopkeepers have just shut down completely, and they just say like file does not exist or something. Have an easy day when you buy stuff, for instance.
Yeah. And then I think this, I don't know if it's a clue to what's going on, but it's definitely weird, is that when you do get too cold and quote unquote die, you get teleported into just this like labyrinth looking thing where are these different passageways, and you just kind of walk down them until you respawn back on the map. And I don't know if this happened to you at all, but some of the times when I respawned, I would respawn over a cliff.
That never happened to me.
I wasn't sure if that was intentional or a bug, but I would respawn and then my car would fall to its death, and then I would end up on a road.
Interesting. Yeah, that's another thing to mention here. It's like, I thought it was nice that you don't die when your car explodes. Like you can drive off of the side of a cliff and it will like, your car will have a like blow, like a basically on fire animation, and then you'll just end up back on the road. You only go into the labyrinth when you freeze to death.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know, that's a
It's
spoiler,
interesting.
I guess, but yeah. Let's talk about like the main storyline. So you, as you meet more people in town, you meet someone who's like the only person pretty much you interact with who's not a shopkeeper, and their name is MK. And MK had this friend named Seb who used to do the deliveries, and a lot of the shopkeepers will kind of slowly deliver Seb and MK's friendship story to you as you make deliveries, where like they'll say, "Oh, you're Seb, right? No, but you look just like Seb," or things like that. So you kind of start to realize something's up. And basically MK is like, they read to me kind of like a secret agent, like they're trying to like infiltrate something the whole time. So they're like, "Go get this material for me, or meet me here and we'll do this mission together." And MK kind of has you do a number of main story quests for them, which culminate in you going to this shadowy factory. And inside the factory, there are a number of things that can happen. But before that, I'm sure Jamie has stuff to add.
Well, yeah, just up until that point, you're basically uncovering that something is up, and then uncovering that basically you are in a simulation, and all of the shopkeepers are like machine learning bots, and you're just in a computer essentially. There's not too much context still on like who you are as your character, but prior to the factory, there's not a ton of story except for the uncovering through some of mostly dialogue with shopkeepers that you're in a simulation.
Yeah, which like honestly is the only thing keeping this game from being like an all-timer for me, is like, yeah, someone who like spends their entire day coding like makes a game about someone coding. It's like, it's very like looping back in on itself, and also I think it's just kind of like, this is a game developer. It's not like a hyper imaginative writer. Like, I think artistically the game is spot on, and I think the writing itself is very good for what the story is, but as far as like the plot itself, I thought it wasn't like the most imaginative thing. It's not like a knock against it. It's just like one of the only things that was not like a 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the plot of secretly being in a simulation has just been mostly run into the ground these days, and is pretty easy to pick up on and guess about. Yeah. These days.
It is cute though, like you said, where like the game boots up and it looks like it's kind of an old school like MS-DOS type of thing booting up, where it like shows like a command line going through all of these. Basically just showing kind of the program start code. And then you realize that it's like, not only is that like a cute stylistic thing, but it's like, it's actually narratively relevant, where it's like that needs to happen for the whole simulation to boot up.
Yeah. And I mean, like this game, I guess, could have been like a visual novel, but it's not. Like, there's not much story. It kind of is about the story, but also isn't about the story. And I feel like it knows that, a big reveal about it just all being a simulation isn't gonna blow anyone's socks off. But I feel like then the cool thing about the game is what happens with the ending, which again comes back to the idea of rewarding curiosity and not taking things for face value or for granted, and continuing to poke at things and dig in and ask questions.
Yeah, which I think is way more of like a Jamie gamer thing than me. Like for me, like I would have probably been 95% as satisfied if it was just like vibey winter driving in a little cute K truck. So there's a number of things I want to hear about from you in this spoiler section. I think the most important thing we should dig into are the multiple endings, and kind of like how you get them, what's up with them, what goes on, and the story implications it has. And then also the like off the beaten path, like collectibles, optional stuff you can do, maybe mention fishing and stuff like that. But let's talk about those two things, and I want you to lead the conversation because you're more of the explore every inch of things person.
Yeah, so once you get through all the main goals and end up at the factory, MK sends you in and you basically walk through this spooky, dark, cold feeling factory until you reach a control panel. And at that point, it has a label saying choose as sort of the action label of what you're doing. So right away, before you even click into it, you know you're going to be faced with some sort of choice. And MK, I think up until this point, was talking about wanting to reboot the shopkeepers. It was kind of some story where Seb wanted out of the system, had maybe figured it out, was like shut down, but always cared about the shopkeepers and wanted them cared for. MK never really did care for them because he didn't see them as much or interact with them as much, but then like wanted to adhere to Seb's wishes and kind of make some comment about wanting to reboot the characters to keep them safe, even though that's not the most ideal world. I didn't entirely understand it, but when you click into the control panel, you have two options. There's either rebooting the shopkeepers, and it is a bit obscure. It says something about SD blah blah blah, and it says there's an error and you're given an option to reboot it, and you can kind of pick up on that it's the shopkeepers because there's maybe 12 of them. It's like SD1, SD2, and then the other option is hydraulic power, and you can basically shut off the power in the dam, and then I think after you click it, it indicates that it would shut everything down. And so I clicked the reboot one first because that was what MK talked about wanting to do. So you do that, MK talks to you, is like, oh, you didn't need any help, everything's rebooted, you go back to the start screen. No rolling credits, just back to the start screen. So that happened, and I was like, that was so anticlimactic. What is up with this? I guess I picked the wrong ending. So I went back in to my save file. It's like, okay, I guess I have to pick the other ending. I didn't drive around at that point. Go back into the factory. I realize it's a little weird because MK doesn't talk on the radio that you have, which they do when you're first going through. So I was like, okay, that's kind of strange. Maybe they just don't want to repeat the dialogue. Go in, press the second option for shutting everything down. No dialogue after that. It just goes right back to the start screen. You're like, okay, I guess I shut everything down. MK couldn't talk to me. What was up with that? I go back into the save file. I want to see what's up. I start kind of just driving around because I'm curious about what's going on. I drive back up to the top of the hill where MK was before you go into the factory, and they're flopped over on the ground with the fire out, completely shut down.
Which is so sad because for the entire game before this, MK is like the one bright spot where they always have like a fire going. They're always playing their little flute, which is so cute and has a very distinctive kind of chiptune melody, which embodies the coziness of this game for me. And then, yeah, fire's out, laying on the ground and inert. And that's kind of, I feel like a lot of people are like, well, you killed them all, but it's not like a brutal like murder. It's more just like the characters become like mannequins where like they won't talk to you. There's like no life in the town then, and that's how all the characters are, the shopkeepers and MK.
And I think that feels even colder and darker and scarier. And I did almost cry when I saw MK, and that was combating with my feeling of being like, oh shit, there's more to the story here, something's going on. I didn't really know what to do at that point, but I had two things that I wanted to discover. I wanted to know what the duct tape did, and I wanted to know what the blind bag was in the pawn shop. So of course I started going in to see what was up with the shopkeepers. They were all gone. You also, at that point, the buildings you enter into don't have any warmth. So you realize pretty quickly that you're going to have to stay warm. Then you can realize that you can just quote unquote steal stuff from the shops because the shopkeepers aren't awake anymore. But anyways, I think I really just lucked into this with the blind bag thing because I was curious about the blind bag. So I walked into the pawn shop and realized that they were selling this recovery disc. I don't know if that was only in the pawn shop.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It's only in the, I think it's Easton pawn shop.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's Weston, one of Easton or Weston.
So I feel like I really lucked out on that because otherwise I do not know why I would have gone in there for any reason.
You would have Googled it.
I would have Googled it. But instead, I was curious about what the blind bag was because the blind bag costs $50. I was never going to spend $50 on it. I'm pretty sure it just gets you some random item. Like I think I grabbed one and walked out of the shop and it was firewood. But anyways, I found the recovery disc. I was like, oh shit. What is this? Go back to the factory. Put it in. You can reboot everyone. Credits roll.
So cute.
Yeah. And then, of course, me being curious even more, I went back into the game after that and went to talk to everyone. And you can get like little dialogue from all the people about being, I guess, alive again. And if you go and talk to MK, they talk about how grateful they are. They didn't even know that things could be saved and rebooted in this way, and that they're going to go off on a mission to try to find Seb because they're sure that there's a backup somewhere and that they know they're leaving the shopkeepers in good hands with you, which is really cute as just another little extra thing. And again, how the game just rewards curiosity.
Yeah, and then if you're the type of person who wants to, live in the world and just like drive around and fish forever, you can do that. You can just make deliveries till you get $10 bazillion, and the driving is fun. Like I said, it's the main fun. Tell me about the fishing minigame, Jamie.
Oh, yeah. As a little side quest, you can get a fishing rod and go into these huts on the ice and do some ice fishing and make some fish soup by putting a fish in a pot of water above a wood stove. And I really appreciated the graphics on this. They were very well done. You put the fish in the pot and it's sticking out, just the tail, out of the water, and it slowly looks like it's dissolving into your pot. So it kind of feels like you're making an acid bath of fish soup. Very well done.
I couldn't tell if that was sarcastic, but the graphics are pretty specific. They are a genre unto themselves. But yeah, and then fish soup is like the most energy giving food you can have. It's even better than coffee, which was even better than energy drinks sanctioned by EasyCo. So yeah, start a revolution, make some fish soup. Jamie, anything else you wanted to cover here in the spoiler section?
I think I just want to dig in one last time about kind of what this game offers. I think I find it fascinating that there is the, I guess I can say, monotonous side of it to the deliveries, where you can just cozy in and be making deliveries, doing the same thing over and over and relaxing. But then it also leans into the discovery aspect. And kind of like we mentioned, I really get a lot out of discovering Easter eggs or things that seem secretive in games. And I think that's why I love this game so much with the ending.
We'll talk about the bobblehead too. We didn't talk about that.
Oh, yeah. You can also drive around and there's these little secret snow cats in hard to get areas. And if you click on them, it says bobblehead found. And then when you get into your car again, if you go into the first person POV, you'll see a bobblehead of one of the shopkeepers on your dashboard. And then if you go into those shops after discovering their bobblehead, they have a bobblehead in their shop, so you can switch between the different bobbleheads you have on your dashboard. And
apparently, one of the bobbleheads looks just like you, or like is supposed to be Seb, and then there's like a crashed truck next to it, or like an inert truck, which like I just found through some Redditing, but
wow,
that might be a myth.
Okay, so I originally didn't know how to see the bobbleheads after you get them, but I think that was the first one I found.
Yeah, because
there was a snow cat and a truck next to it, but I didn't have the chance to see the bobblehead because I didn't know you need to go in the first person POV. So that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. The only other like collectible thing I think that could also be a myth is maybe you can get like different outfits, but I don't know. Neither of us got an outfit.
No.
Yeah, sorry I kind of interrupted your point.
No, that's totally okay. Those, I mean, again, were another fun thing that if you were curious enough to try going into some random places, you could, yeah, get a little Easter egg. But really, my main point was that I feel like this game can reward different players for different reasons, and one of the reasons that I really liked it was because of how not hand-holdy it was and how much it rewarded curiosity. And even though it maybe seems like you were at an ending, there are always things to discover afterwards if you were curious enough to just be like, what if?
Yeah, definitely. I think a great game in that sense where like you can spend, 6 to 8 hours with the main story, and then there's kind of limitless opportunities as far as all the driving you can do thereafter and exploring.
Yeah, and with that, maybe one thing we didn't really mention was just the length of this game. I think it maybe took me between 6 to 8 hours. How long do you think it took you?
Like 6.5.
Yeah, so it's not that long of a game, but it's not that short of a game. I feel like it's a good middle tier short game length. So if that's the length that you're looking for, that's the length this game is.
We'll pop out of spoilers now and head on to endorsements. All right, folks. Thanks for making it this far with us. We are now done with spoilers and we're moving on to endorsements. As you can probably tell from Jamie and my dialogue, we enjoyed the game. If you didn't hear this in the spoiler section, it took me about 6.5 hours to finish. Jamie estimates somewhere between 6 and 8, and reminding that the price was it $12.50?
I believe it was $12.99.
$12.99. So just keep those metrics in mind as we endorse or not endorse. For me, I won't keep you in suspense any longer. I love the game. I would super recommend it to anyone just kind of looking for a vibey, chill experience, especially if you're, into kind of, like we've talked about, potentially cozy driving games, potentially spooky stuff. There's a lot here. I think like if you're into exploration, if you like, really, if you're just okay with video games, I think you're really gonna like this video game. There's a lot for everyone. Jamie, what do you think?
Yeah, I also endorse it. There's a part of me that, I think we just need to not get sucked into seeking out games that just look really good, or else we're just going to be endorsing everything, I feel like, all the time. This one feels like a bit of a cheat because it had really good reviews. It looked right up our alley. And so it is great to be able to endorse it and say that we really enjoyed playing it. And yeah, like Jonny mentioned, I would also say that I feel like this will be a great game for anyone who is okay with not a super action-packed game. Like, you're not battling things or anything like that. It is monotonous at times, but if you like Jonny said, exploring, if you have a curious side to you, then I think you'll really enjoy this game.
It's meditative, right? It's not like a hyper action-packed thing. So I think the only reason someone might not be that into it is if they were expecting that going in. And I think, this game will find its audience. If any of the stuff we mentioned resonated with you, it's likely that you'll like it. Moving on to binnable moments here. For me, I'll just talk quickly about the 2 games we were thinking of doing. They're free games. One of them is called Once Upon a Shell, which is a cute kind of conceit. You're the tortoise and you're racing a bunch of hares, rabbits, not, little hair follicles. And you have to like duck into your shell when you go downhill to pick up speed. And then when you run, you're really slow. So like you kind of run up to the hills and then gain a bunch of momentum going down and run up to hills. And like, it's fun for a bit. There are like little kind of trivial upgrades you can buy in between races. And the races get like really hard, like the difficulty spikes very quickly. I didn't beat it. I tried for like 45 minutes and the races take like 2 minutes, so there you go. That one's fun, kind of a little racing sim you can play for like under an hour. The other one was Skybound, which seemed like it had a lot to it. The cutscenes are unskippable, which I did not like. It's kind of a first-person traversal sim, most closely related to something like Neon White, where you're kind of like speed running with this grappling hook and jumping and exploring. But I couldn't figure out how to save. So I would like get to like the second or third island each time I tried to play, and then like I would be like, surely I would have hit a save point by now. And then I would like go to the main menu and restart the game, and it would like start me over with those unskippable cutscenes. And I was like, I can't do this week. Let's play Easy Delivery Co.
Was that just like you were done playing, and so the next time you picked up the game, it restarted?
Yeah.
Okay, because it's not, you weren't trying to end your quote unquote run, right?
Exactly. I was just hoping because I had found no other way. And it also like crashed for me a couple times, so I wouldn't really recommend either. Once Upon a Shell was cute, like if you're just looking for something cute and somewhat unique. Like it's not a kart racer, you're kind of like running, which is interesting. But yeah, both nothing to write home about really. I watched the original Scream for the first time last night, which was awesome. Before that, I was trying to watch Twisted, which people are saying is like top 20 worst movies of all time, and I can see why. It is freaking terrible. Like it's worse than the Oxford Murders in so many ways, and it's so misogynist and just very poorly written and directed, and I did not like it.
Yeah, I feel like there's a difference between bad and offensive and bad.
Like one of the reviews said like, I feel embarrassed to have watched this movie, and I kind of agree. So Scream was way better than that. I loved Scream. I will be a forever Scream fan now. This week I've just been doing like a lot of songwriting and consuming of media. I tried watching a little Joe Pickett today, which is like a Paramount Plus show about like a game warden in Wyoming. It was like very like TV-y. I didn't really love it, but the setting was cool. I like Wyoming. I like the big American landscapes and coffee and evergreens and all that stuff. But
and I was born in Wyoming, so
that's right, Laramie.
Yeah.
Jamie, what about you?
I really should probably reflect more on my binnable moments before we start recording. This past week was a little bit tough. My PC crashed out. My internal...
Please talk about this, because I think it's super impressive what you did. And I feel like some people adjacently interested in video games would be interested in your PC journey here this week.
It was horrible. I think it was all my fault, and I probably did all the things wrong. But essentially, my PC started getting really slow. It was using pretty much 100% of my disk. So I started trying to figure out what was up with that, see if there were maybe some corrupted files that I needed to repair. It just kept getting worse and worse and worse until my internal SSD was so corrupted that I couldn't even boot up Windows. So a good life lesson: sometimes I'm not the most patient or intentional. I definitely can be. This was not one of those moments, and trying to repair your PC or do things with your PC is not a time to be impatient and unintentional, in case you didn't know. So I had to go get another SSD. This is all within maybe 48 hours of things crashing out. I got a new SSD, put it in, had to reinstall everything. My old SSD was so corrupted that I couldn't recover anything. Thankfully, I didn't have anything too special or important on my PC, so I was able to reinstall all my programs. I think the biggest L was just that I had recorded and started editing a review video for Dun Jungle, since I'm starting to put up some video version game reviews of the games we play, so I had to re-record that. I almost didn't. I'm glad I did. I think it was better the second time around. The silver lining is that having to reinstall everything, I think, allowed me to set up my streaming and recording settings to actually be a little bit better quality. So always a silver lining on things, but it was infuriating, frustrating, but I'm proud of myself for figuring something out and getting everything set back up. The highs and lows of a custom built PC. I'm not the most tech oriented, not the least, not the most, and this was definitely a test of that.
Yeah, and you've been doing like a lot of video content of the games we've played, and some we haven't. And I was wondering where folks could find you. Please tell them.
On YouTube under Little Red Jam, or on Twitch under Little Red Jam. I'm currently streaming on both places, and then also on YouTube. Gonna do some video reviews. I might end up doing some clips of stream highlights, but that is a lot higher effort, so we'll see about that.
Sweet, Jamie. I've been loving the content so far. Keep it up. That's kind of all we got for you this week. Do you want to sign us off here, Jam?
Thanks for listening to our show. We really appreciate it. If you haven't rated this show already, if you can, that really helps us and other listeners know if they might enjoy this show as well. Yeah, like always, we love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Soil Day Radio.
For a community of weirdos built on words. Find out more at soildayradio.com.